Welcome to the Ripened Heart podcast, where we explore the depths of the human psyche through the lens of homeopathy, human design, and astrology for soul-deep healing. Each episode will feature vulnerable and thought-provoking conversations highlighting healing modalities that help us shift our perspective on what it means to be a healthy and fulfilled human being in today's world. I'm your host, Kaylee Anello. Let's dive into the podcast. Hi guys, welcome to the second episode of the Ripened Heart podcast. I first just wanted to thank you guys so much for the positive response that I got to the first episode. It meant so much to me. I was honestly really nervous about putting it out and second guessing and had a bit of a vulnerability hangover afterwards. So the encouragement meant a lot to me. So I'm so happy that you guys got something out of it. And I was on my Telegram page, and if you want to follow that, it's just Kaylee Anello on Telegram. It'll come up as the Ripened Heart, and I asked them if I should do another episode with my fiancé, Emily Florence, where we just do a kind of fun conversation about our human design type and about a little bit about our natal charts, and just talk about our real life experiences with our charts. We've both been utilizing our design for, I think, two and a half years about, and then astrologically, we've been studying and kind of utilizing our chart in, 7 years, Em?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
More specifically in the past couple of years.
Yeah,
as well.
We've been really intentional about it for the past 2.5 or so years. And so we just want to talk about, how we really embodied the teachings of our chart, because I know especially in human design, the language is super technical, and I have a lot of right variable in my chart, which, if you know, is not great with studying super factual, detailed information. I don't learn that way. I can digest it and then apply it to my life, and I really need to experience it to really get a full understanding of it. So I just feel like it's been such an amazing experience to actually live out the wisdom that's in my chart and, natal chart and human design body graph. And so I just wanted to talk about that a little bit today, and I hope that you get something out of it. So yeah, I'm with Emily Florence, and we're just going to start by saying, I guess, like our basic chart stats. So do you want to start with yours, Em?
Sure. Astrology or human design?
You pick, just all of it.
Okay. We'll just do astrology, sun, moon, rising.
Okay.
I'm a Cancer sun, Scorpio moon, and an Aries rising. And then for human design, I am a 4-6 generator. Do you want me to give the
authority and profile?
The authority is emotional.
Yeah.
Anything else?
You did profile. You said 4-6.
Yes.
What's your environment? I that's one of my favorites.
Valley.
Is
that right?
Yeah.
Valley.
Okay, cool. So I am a generator, 2-4 profile, emotional authority, and then my sun is in Pisces, and my moon and rising are both in Aries. And so one of the things that we were talking about before we started recording is how we both found it really interesting to both be generators with strong Aries placements. And I definitely have a stronger Aries than Em does. My moon and rising, like I said, are in Aries, and then my Venus is in Aries. And so I have a lot going on in Aries and aspects, to my first house and all of that, yada, yada. And so I just find it super interesting because if you're not familiar, a generator is really not supposed to initiate. The whole, strategy and authority is wait to respond. And for me, it's like wait to get emotional clarity. Like, don't act out from emotions. And Aries is like, let's do it right now. I'm not going to wait. I'm going to be impulsive, especially when I'm emotional.
Act before thinking.
Yeah, yeah. Act first, think later. So it's been interesting to integrate the two. And I don't always do so successfully. I definitely have my moments. And so what I really learned from that, and just jump in whenever, what I've kind of learned from it is once my gut is on board, once, I've really tuned in and ridden out the emotional wave, I've, experienced the highs and lows, maybe even a few times, and I have, at least partial clarity on something. Then once I'm all in, and I can get things done really, really quickly. Like, I remember when I first started my business, I think I had like all of my website up and all my pages and everything linked together within like 24 hours. I also have a defined route, which definitely plays into that.
Yeah, I was going to say my process looks a lot different.
Yeah, her process looks so different, which is interesting, but I do have more Aries and I have the defined route. And so that's been like, the route in human design is pure adrenaline. It's, let's get that to-do list done. Let's get it done fast. And the thing is, though, is, I have definitely rushed through things. Like, I remember in college, I would be the person who would just write their paper in like 40 minutes and not spell check it and be like, all right, well, if I get a B, that's fine. Like, I don't really care about, like, I'm definitely not a perfectionist in that way. And it's gotten me into trouble where I definitely make stupid mistakes. It kind of reminds me of that manifesting generator energy that I talk about with clients sometimes, where it's like you're moving so quickly that you sometimes have to backpedal because you've made errors. And like, I'm sure a manifesting generator with my placements would handle it with a bit more grace because they're much better multitaskers than pure generators are. But yeah, what have you felt with being a generator and having to wait to respond, but like having that cardinal Aries energy in your chart?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it comes up in, like, I don't know, I feel like I'm a little bit slower for things to get going in comparison to you. So it's like, I find that it's just so obvious in terms of like, what does this sound like? They always go with like, or
the generator grunts.
Yeah, but mine is more like a oh. So it's like,
oh my God.
I don't really find that I struggle as much with it because I just find that I'm naturally more just like looking for things than acting on them. Mm-hmm. So I just think it's, I don't know, just a little different for me.
Yeah, I feel like we're both, though, can get frustrated by how slow the generator process is, though. This is something that this subject I'm really interested in is that generator process where it's very slow and methodical. And it reminds me a lot of Capricorn energy, where it's like the mountain goat climbing up the mountain one step at a time. And sometimes the mountain goat has to take a break and rest. And that's what we call the generator plateau, where you kind of just feel stuck and stifled and uninspired, and you need to seek outside inspiration. Say if you have an open head center, or if you have a defined head center, internally inspire yourself and kind of re-spark that sacral energy so that you can move forward and take the next step. But the thing too is that generators, they want to like zoom out and know every step and how it's going to look. And it never looks the way that we want it to. It's never on the timeline that we want it to be on.
No.
And so we both experienced that a lot. Em and I both have day jobs where we ironically work at the same place. And this is the other thing about our charts, is that because we're both Aries rising, we have kind of similar natal charts. And Em can speak to this more eloquently than I can, but it's like every house ruler, how do you say it? It's like the chart looks similar in Aries rising because
Most of it depends on which method you use.
Yeah.
In the whole sign method, each Aries falls into the first house and Taurus into the second house, and on through Pisces. In Placidus, you can have some houses or a couple signs in one house, and there's more overlap. But in general, it tends to be roughly the same, regardless. So
yeah.
a lot of the themes tend to just be the same in terms of timing. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like we have the same personality per se. Although that is a factor of the rising sign. That is part of your personality. But
yeah.
It's just the way things end up working out in your life. Like we have like some of the same life stages and events happening, situations that are kind of similar.
Yeah, like we mirror each other a lot.
That's a good way to say it, yes.
It's a beautiful thing that has, you always have like somebody there by your side who you're going through life with, and it's been amazing, but also it's like, fuck, like we're going through the same thing.
Yeah, it puts an added pressure on us both.
And it's hard to see that mirrored back to you. Like going back to the job piece. So basically what happened is when we moved to Portland, in 2016, I basically got into a sales position, which is really funny because my South node is in Gemini, and that's like very sales. And I also have a lot of sales gates in my human design body graph. So it's a strength that I acknowledge and recognize, I guess. But like, as a 2-4, hermit opportunist, that hermit line does not want to go sell to strangers, let alone the generator does not want to initiate and go reach out to all these contacts. And it's just kind of a nightmare for my design, and it's been my main source of frustration throughout, my time in Portland. But it's something that I've had to surrender to, like completely surrender to, because I see how it's supported me exploring human design and, being able to do my mentorship and things like that. But anyway, so Em and I ended up working at the same company. I'm in sales and she does more of the admin, like the administrative. And it's just like, it's funny because every year since 2016, well, really 2017, I'd say, we're like, this is the last year we're going to be at this job. Like, this is it. This is the last year.
No.
And it's not fucking happening. Like, it's just not, like, it's just been hilarious because we had all of those, like, big planets, like Pluto, Capricorn, Jupiter, all in our 10th house last year. And when we saw that, like Em said in the last episode, Pluto is, like, gonna shake things up and, like, it's kind of the destroyer, the rebirth. And I looked at that in my 10th house, I'm like, I'm gonna get fired. Like, I'm definitely leaving. I'm definitely leaving my job. Like, that it's gonna be, like, 2020 is the year, and I'm still there. I'm just like, oh my God. And so it's just hilarious because, like, Pluto's still in the 10th. So we're making headway. Like, there's always been progress in that area, but it's been a really slow process, and I just wanted to tell that story, not to complain, because honestly, like, there's nothing to complain about. I just want to say, because, a lot of people out there I know, are really feel like they're stuck in a certain area of their lives, and especially, generators, they see their potential and they see, what they're really passionate about and what they want to master. And sometimes, it's just a journey and it's a process and it takes many twists and turns. But it doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong or you're not living your design just because it's not panning out the way that you thought it would. I mean, it can be a methodical step-by-step process. And so, we really have mirrored each other in that way of struggling in career, and especially because, we're both coming up to our Saturn return in 2022. And so that's just been our thing. And I think the other way that we ended up mirroring each other is in our healing journeys. Can speak to this. Her profile, the 4-6, she definitely had a lot of trial and error. And where mine was just really understanding and tuning into my sacral response on what was appropriate for me to be implementing in my health regimen and what was just too intense and too much. And so that was another life area. But I'm going to let Em talk about her 4-6 profile, because I think you guys will find this really interesting because she's about to enter the second phase of it. So I'm going to let her explain that a little bit for us.
Yeah, so do you want like the health aspects as well, or just specifically just...
I'm just curious about your experience as a generator with a 4-6 profile, like what your process has felt like, looked like.
Yeah, so the 4-6, I remember first getting a human design reading and learning about the 4, the opportunist, and I was really confused by that because I think at the time, that's the thing about my current job, it's a lot of Excel, a lot of spreadsheets, paperwork and things like that. If you're it might actually be a pretty good generator job if you like doing this sort of thing.
If you like it.
I don't, but the thing about it is I don't really engage with people that much, and there's not a lot of so the 4 line needs to be like, I don't know, making connections and like it's more of a people person. And so I was in Portland working from home, and it was like it's just more isolating as a job. And so that, I think that's what threw me off with the 4, because I had such a hard time thinking in the past about how I was around people. There's also the open throat, so I'm not like an avid conversationalist either. I was just kind of struggling to understand that. And then it's like, then when I really felt into it and just, especially the past year or so, making use of that, I realized yes, I do. Like, I actually really need connections with people to feel good and be engaged with my community. And so that definitely hurt me a lot to not make use of that. And I realized when I started to open up more and just come out of my shell, things worked a lot better for me, just naturally. As far as the 6 line, I'm experiencing that first 30-year trial and error period that Kaylee was talking about. So yeah, that did come up a lot in terms of health and different types of detox, just kind of using my body as this experimentation to figure out like what the hell I needed to do to feel better. So that was a process. I would say also just my changing interests and just I bounced back and forth a lot in college in terms of majors, like what am I going to major in, and just stuck with psychology. But I had an interest in nutrition, and now it's gone from health to astrology. So, but it's like I also had just this time where I fell away from it for a while in terms of like the health interests, and it's starting to come back a bit, which is good. I think that's maybe the generator plateau.
Yeah, that's a really good example of it actually, because it's like, if even things that you love and things that are right for you can give you a sense of frustration when you're at the plateau. And that's what I've really found is it's right for you because even if you get to those periods of frustration or lack of inspiration and you just kind of lose steam and you lose momentum, there's still going to be something that keeps pulling you back to it over and over and over again. Or your field literally pulls that subject to you over and over again, and you just feel it. It literally, resonates on such a deep level that you don't know why, and you don't know exactly the role that it's going to play in your life maybe right away, or how it's going to evolve and shift over time. But there's just something about it that you keep coming back to, and that's how you know it's right. And so we've both experienced that with natural health, like we had been doing it for so long, and we had to, both go through trial and error with it, really, even though, that's not my dominant profile line. All of your gates in your body graph will still have all 6 of the lines in them. So even if you're not a 3 line, you're still going to have most likely 3 lines in your chart. I know that's kind of technical and may not make sense to some of you, but stick with me. Most of us are going to go through trial and error in some respect, especially as we make our way to mastery of something as generators, are really wanting to do. That's just going to come with the territory. And so, it's just been like, it's such a process of evolution. And that's the other piece that, people don't talk about as much with a generator is, you're here to really pursue your life's work. And, that can be literal work. It can be, being a parent. It can be also, though, self-work and mastering yourself and mastering who you are. Because there's going to be so many people who, sense your capacity to perform and to go and to have this amazing reservoir of energy, and they're going to want you to do things. They're going to, just today I went to the chiropractor for the first time in a while, and I, was really in I would say my generator energy, like as in I've been feeling really lit up and inspired by my work recently, putting out the podcast. And I've been taking a lot of webinars in homeopathy. So I've just been really lit up lately. And so I noticed that when that happens, it's almost like my auric field gets stronger and it pulls in more opportunities. And that doesn't mean, though, that they're the right ones. So, I hadn't seen him in a while, and he was hiring for a front desk person. And it's funny because that was something that I had kind of wanted to pursue I think it was like a year and a half ago. After I graduated from my nutritional therapy program, I wanted to work in his office to kind of mentor with him and to get clinical experience. So that opportunity ended up coming right back around in classic 4-line style, where, you get opportunities through your network and through your connections. And this time I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy that when I sought this out, when I initiated a year and a half ago, it didn't work out because it wasn't meant for me. And then so it circled back around, and, this time I, just politely declined. But it's just interesting because, I really do feel like there's something powerful about this generator field that just pulls things to it when you're really in your purpose and when you're lit up by life. Because when I'm in my more like generator plateau, it can even feel a little bit depressing, like depressive energy where you're just not feeling creatively inspired. I do not magnetize opportunities to me whatsoever. I don't and I go into my hermit mode, and that's really when I'm in my 2 line, where I'm like, I need to integrate things. I need to be in my own space, my own energy. And every generator will experience this differently. Manifesting generators, I want to say, this all goes and applies to you as well because you have the same auric field as a generator. And so I'm sure most types can relate to this on some level, and it's just, so it's a natural ebb and flow, and you're not always going to be on, and the plateau is going to pass, and you just need to kind of reinvigorate that spark in something. But I don't even remember where I was going with this. I just went on a long tangent.
I think it was the generator plateau.
Yeah, I basically described it, so it's like the opportunity even ended up circling back to me today. And it's funny though, because like once I'm out of my plateau, I'm out of my plateau, and it's like exponential growth for a little bit, and then it kind of stalemates again. And it's like, well, of course, because you're not always going to have like that, high power energy. That's just not human, and so it's natural. And, with the Aries, again, going back to that cardinal energy, it's like, then I have to actually promise myself that I'm going to see things through though. Because I can have like so much energy out of the gate, and then my hermit sign, like, remember what it felt like to be alone and not talk to anybody? Like, why don't we try that again? Like, that was comfortable. So it's just funny. And I mean, nothing about my design is consistent. And so, I mean, I apologize in advance if this, goes into the podcast, if it's inconsistent. I'm really trying for it not to be. And luckily, my lovely fiance here has a more consistent design than I do. So hopefully she can pull me out of the hermit and like be like the last like 4 days, she's like, are we going to record again? Remember, we're going to record, right? Are we going to record? We're going to record. And that's been helpful. So thank you.
I was ready to record like 2 hours after we finished the first one, which is kind of shocking to me, but...
And that's what the hermit needs. It's like when you read about the hermit line in human design, it's like you really do need somebody to pull you back out of that hermit cave, because I could just be there comfortable for quite a while. But I will say, like, with that 4 line, even though it's my, unconscious, they say, like, line that I'm growing into over time. And I echo what Em said. I didn't resonate with the 4 line at all when I first saw that. I'm like, me? Yeah, okay. The least like social person. But then I looked at it and I'm like, wait, I actually have like a lot of random connections all over the world that just kind of naturally happens for me. And I really enjoy that. And I really love that. And when I'm connecting with people and I'm more in my 4 line, like it re-inspires me as a generator, and it keeps me motivated and keeps me going. And that was part of the motivation behind the podcast, is like, the 4 line. I want to connect with you all. I want to connect with fellow human design readers, astrologers, homeopaths, anyone interesting in holistic health. Like, that's my thing. I have these random connections that I want to just get them on and talk to them. And so that's been fun. So it's just, part of your design you really do grow into over time. It's not like you're going to look at your body graph, and same goes for natal chart. Like, you're not going to look at it and resonate with everything. And that's because some parts of the chart are unconscious, like half the chart. Anything in red is unconscious, and you have to feel into it and grow into it and meditate on it. And same with natal. I mean, are there placements in particular in the natal chart you think that are harder to see in yourself than others? Or
yeah, the water houses in particular, but especially like Pisces and 12th house is kind of hard to work with. Neptune, hard to see, because Neptune rules Pisces and the 12th house. Also, Pluto is a big one that pretty much is the unconscious. So wherever Pluto is in your chart, and just like, Scorpio energy, I have, a Scorpio moon, and it's conjunct Pluto in the 8th house. So, it's like...
How mysterious of you.
Yeah, and I'm revealing it. But
exposed.
Exactly. But with that, in particular, you just, once you're made aware of it, via a reading, or just on your own, in your own research, then you can start to engage with it, just make the unconscious conscious, and, you can start to just, be the Plutonian about it, and make notes, and like observe what your patterns are, if you can just kind of like look from more the observer standpoint, I guess you could say.
And then you go through the rebirth because you shed all that falsity of who you thought you were.
Right. And the fourth house is like that represents your home and your family, but also your upbringing and your like kind of like your programming. So that's another area to look at. So that's why that's Cancer, the moon. That's So I'm basically talking about the water houses once again. So
in astrology, by the way, for those of you who are completely lost.
Yes. Yeah.
I just think that human design and astrology are like a match made in heaven. I don't think it would feel incomplete to me at this time to like have one and not the other. That's just me, Everyone has their own experience of what they resonate with. Some people look at human design, they look at the body graph, and they're like, I don't ever want to look at this again. Because I find it interesting, like, when I looked at the body graph, I actually thought visually it made more sense than the natal chart. Just because, like, it has the outline of a human being, and it has, like, things that look like chakras, and I'm vaguely familiar with those, and yada, yada. And then I look at the natal chart, and I'm like, this is literally just, like, I immediately was transported back to math class with degrees and angles, and I immediately wanted to like click out of the page.
Yeah, it's but that's funny because then I hear astrologers say the exact opposite.
That's exactly,
when it comes to human design.
It's weird.
Which is what I mean, I think with astrology, if you know the symbols and you know what they mean and like what planets or luminaries they represent, then you can almost kind of intuitively feel into it a bit more. Totally. Like you can see, like a stellium, for instance, like 3 or more planets in the same sign. Like you see that stack of energy that's more prominent in one part of the chart. Or it's like, can even just, I honestly like what I pay attention to are like the design, like and just, I use my intuition a lot, honestly.
Yeah.
When it comes to it. And yeah, there are things like, major aspects like, Grand Cross or, a yod. And,
I still don't understand that at all.
Yeah. So these are just geometric patterns. I don't want to go too much into that and go on another tangent, but just
it's
like
complex. They're both complex systems, to be fair.
No, and you can spend all day with the chart. You don't want to. You can do the natal chart, or you can go into every progression and whatnot. But
I mean, I learn new things about my human design all the time, and I experience. It's funny when you experience human design as a human design professional, because now it's just like, wow, I'm hitting my generator plateau in human design, learning the human design system. Like, how meta is that? Because I just like, again, I think this is my specific chart where it's just like, I really have to take all this detailed information. I have the capacity to learn it, but I have to sit with it and actually integrate it. And that's something that I've really had to learn, is that I can't just like stuff my brain with as much as possible and expect myself to actually integrate it. I need to live it. I need to breathe it. I need to sit with it. And I actually have to practice a lot of self-control to not dive into all the minute details that actually don't matter right now, because you don't even know step 1. If you don't even know your type, don't worry about your variable. It's like all of like the beautiful thing about these systems is that it's a lifelong study of yourself. And I just find that so gratifying and so fun that like you can literally be a human design reader or a natal chart reader, or an astrologer, is the correct term. And you still learn things about your chart, and you still can learn even different ways of looking at your chart and different systems. And I love that about it. And that's exactly how homeopathy is as well, because homeopathy essentially is kind of like a typing system in a very metaphysical way. I mean, somebody is sitting across from me, I'm hearing their story, I'm weaving the common threads together, and I'm matching it to a remedy that's really going to resonate with their physical and mental picture. And so in a way, it's like it's kind of like a even more zoomed out perspective on somebody, because there's thousands of remedies, literally thousands of possibilities of what you could be. But it's just another way really to learn about yourself. And I guess that's what I'm interested in studying, is any system, anything that can bring me closer to myself and understanding the people that I love and how to live a more aligned life. I'm all about it. I get obsessed with it, and I have to like be able to actually digest and integrate the information. And so, if anyone out there listening is new to either astrology or human design or whatever, any system like that, just I mean, if you're an investigator one line, like go for the all-nighter and just take it all in. Like you're going to do it regardless of what I say. But it's like, if you're somebody who you feel like, there's two types of people. There's some people who go down the rabbit hole and they can be there, 48 hours later and they're still kicking. And then there's other people I talk to who they look at their human design chart and they're like, they come back to me a year later asking for a reading because the first time they saw their chart, they were so overwhelmed. And so just take it, again, piece by piece, and don't get lost in the details. And I always invite people to be intuitive about their chart. Like Em was saying, look at your chart, notice, where do you have a lot of lines coming off your center, where, what's colored in, what are you drawn to learning? Maybe there's a message for you in there, are there a lot of planets in your 5th house, or just what pops out at you? Start there. There's no rule. Sometimes we like to make up these rules in human design of like, this is the order that you're supposed to go in. First you learn type, then you learn strategy and authority. And that's valid. Like I completely understand why, because, a lot of things won't make sense without that context. But I still say always go with your intuition about like what's popping out at you. And then, apply it to the people who live in your same household and see how you two interact, like going back to mine and Em's chart. I think one of the most valuable things that we learned is that I have a defined root and Em has an open root. And that has solved a lot of frustration in our relationship because I move very quickly and Em moves slowly, and she's on her complete own timing. She does not have a care in the world as to when we leave the house.
Okay, yeah, there's a couple things astrologically that I can point out. First of all, Mars in Taurus.
You're like amped up about this.
Mars in Taurus is kind of like, it's like walking through mud. Like it's a very slow and steady process, but
so you have Mars in Taurus.
I have Mars in Taurus, yes. So it's slow, but it'll get the job done in the long run. It's like a marathon versus a sprint. And then I also have Jupiter in Virgo, and Jupiter being like expansive, but it's not like the ideal placement for Jupiter. But being in Virgo, let's just think about what that is. So it's, the most detail-oriented sign of all of them. And it's like, I am very much perfectionist when it comes to my words and, when it comes to my emails and every little last detail on the website, especially, because I was just doing that today. I just want to make sure that what is being said accurately, and so I even speak slower, I think, is something about me. So it's more chill. Just kidding.
Whoa. The truth comes out.
That's to boost my ego. But yeah, it's funny because I will show you something, and then like what I was working on for like 2 hours, you will finish in like 2 minutes. It's
I'm
ridiculous.
not gonna lie, you sent me your website at the end of the day and you're like, I'm done. And I look at your website, there's like nothing on it.
Okay, well, you know what? I had to, you said make it simple, and
I'm just
did.
wondering what you were working on.
Perfection of words. Don't I have, there's like a gate, I think, in terms of like,
in your
I think
throat?
it's in my throat. It's like,
You have one gate in your throat.
yeah, the detail one. I can
Yeah.
speak eloquently on details, so.
Yeah, I don't remember what it is at the moment. But yeah, I know
I'm a
it's-
great editor when it could, like, you
are.
know.
That's true. I remember in college, I would send you my essays. When I had like an English professor, my history professor, I'd be like, look this over. And I feel like you'd be low-key appalled at like some of my grammar mistakes because I just rushed through it because I wanted to get it done. And like I knew I would get a decent grade, so I didn't really care. And then you'd be like, here's 50 things for you to fix.
Yeah, and it's funny because it just, you know, it doesn't show up in every aspect of my life because it's like I'm also not the cleanest, most organized person. And yeah, like.
I mean, I'm like not either. I kind of am. I mean, it's funny because we're sitting in my office recording this, and if you saw M's office compared to mine, it's hysterical. I mean, mine it echoes because I feel like I haven't even filled the space really, but it's just like I feel like the thing with you though is it's not like it's like organized chaos though. It's not just chaos, it's organized chaos. Like it's like that thing where it's like if I put something of yours in the right place, you won't know where it is.
That's true.
Because it makes too much sense.
But then, okay, and literally the opposite for me. Mm-hmm. So if I put it in the wrong place, somehow I know that I put it in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And I'm able to point it out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's really funny. That's just, yeah. But so the root, I mean, yeah. So we learned that early on. That was like the first thing that we were like, oh. And then the second thing was I have a defined throat and you have an open, which you touched on earlier. Your open throat. My throat's connected to my spleen. And I'm really good at speaking on my feet, like speaking quickly, like, which is part of the reason why I could do sales is because, again, I can come into a meeting completely unprepared. Hopefully my boss isn't listening to this.
Unlikely.
And please click off. And I can just completely speak out of my ass.
It's 100% true. It's honestly impressive. I think that's some of the Gemini self know too.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. But I can speak on the fly, and oftentimes, like, actually, if I am in an emotional wave and I need to talk something out, like, I need to talk it out. Em knows this. Like, I will sit her down. It's like I don't need for her to give me advice. I just need for her to listen. And, you know, we both have the tribal channel connecting our solar plexus to our heart center. And so we very much are calmed by touch. So it's like if she just puts her hand on my shoulder and I talk it out from my spleen, I can actually hear my intuition and my higher self. It's like there's more wisdom and clarity in my words if I speak out loud versus like if I'm just thinking about it in my head. And then the addition of like her just like hugging me or like getting me the tissues like means so much to me and calms my emotional wave. Whereas Em with the, you know, sometimes she wants to talk it out, but again, like her having the open throat, there's gonna be a more dynamic range of how she experiences her own self-expression in that way. Sometimes she wants to talk it out, but most times she just wants the touch portion. She just wants a hug. And that was another thing that was super helpful because I didn't understand that. I was like, why don't you want to talk to me about this?
Yeah, I process things a lot on my own, and that's, you know, just having a moon sign, the moon in Scorpio, and, you know, it's just like sometimes you don't know if I'm upset. Like, just, and that's not
True.
just you. I mean, you be actually more
I actually
so,
do know.
You do know more than like anyone else would,
Yeah.
because I trust you and feel comfortable with you, obviously. But like, but even so, it's just like there needs to be that like solitary process, like with the Scorpio moon, like just to like, because it's intense. And I think just being conscious of like the intensity, like, it's almost more just like, so I don't feel bad about it in some ways. And that's where it's like the intensity, I get through the crying and whatnot, and I just need the hug.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, I feel like with my hermit line though, like if I need a good cry, I definitely don't want you to see that. Like I've been known to like literally like build myself my own little cave. Like this is so weird, and I love that I'm telling this to people on a podcast, but I've been known to like just go into the smallest space possible and cry because I find that really comforting. Like I've literally gone into our closet and just cried because I just feel like, first of all, you can't hear me as well. And I don't know, like I definitely like a good cry on my own, but then once I'm past that part, I want to talk about it. Yeah. I think the other like main difference in our design is that you have a defined identity center and I have an open identity center. And I think that the identity center, also called the G center, I think it's probably my favorite center. I find it so fascinating, and I love hearing people's experiences of it, defined or undefined. And so it really, we spoke about that mirror energy. It's very much like that. Like I really find that I can mirror people. And as somebody learning homeopathy, it's like when we're learning about a class of remedies, I can literally feel into that class of remedies. It's like, Em and I both were psychology majors, and any psychology majors out there, the first thing they say in class is do not self-diagnose. Do not diagnose yourself with any of the things you're learning. And if you have an open identity center, you can literally put yourself in anybody's shoes and be like, no, that's literally me though. Like that is me to a T. You can see yourself in everything because you have this fascination with learning about yourself through the other. And, I'm a lot more drawn to mentorship for that reason than Em is, because I like learning with somebody else and kind of having them guide me on that path. It's just something that's been super helpful for me. But it can also be kind of disorienting, and you have to be careful that your path is your path. And that's like something that we had alluded to in the first podcast, where I was so inspired by the people that I learned health from that I just kind of echoed their path without even meaning to, in my head, of like, that's what I want to be. And because they were just so inspiring to me, and I still love what they do, but I was like, once I moved out of Chicago and came to Portland and was in my own space, I realized, oh crap, that's not my path. That's not my personal path right now. Maybe who knows how it'll all develop and integrate over time, but that was a really big lesson for me. And I feel like even, just my sense of self is a bit more open than Em is. And I've struggled more with my identity, I think, than Em has. I'm curious, you want to jump in with do you have any specific things that come to mind with your defined identity center?
Good sense of direction for sure. In comparison to you, no offense.
I get lost in the parking lot. I need a navigator to get out of the parking lot.
I have a very good internal compass for the most part.
You really do. And yeah.
But yeah, I think maybe sometimes I can understand the sense of the open identity More like through the 3 line, though, because it's like the
Interesting.
trial and error aspect.
You're trying on different identities almost.
In some way, yeah, like more, but it's like I had to realize it's more about the doing, like my, I'm the same person regardless, and I don't know, I think when it comes to, hearing people's stories, like let's say if I, were in a homeopathic session, or just, I don't know, what is it, like hearing about different, I don't think I do the diagnosing thing.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like,
that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, because this is something we've talked about is that, if I shadow a patient that has a similar story to mine, I'm like, wow, is I over-identify with them. Whereas you can separate yourself and be like, that's them, this is me.
Yes.
And I think, we talk about this a lot too, that I feel like with astrology, it'll just speak to that energy using different language. Like you could say, okay, well, I have sun in Pisces, and then my sun is in the 12th, so
there's a lot of... You've got a few in the 12th.
Yeah, so I have a lot of 12th house, like lack of boundary energy, which could articulate that as well. I actually think that my Aries energy, though, like I've gotten way better with boundaries where I'm like, absolutely not. Like I'm way better at saying no as I get older and about drawing up boundaries. But still, like, there's still something about me where I can just literally, like, feel somebody's story, which is helpful as a homeopath. Like, literally just feel their energy. And it's funny because, it's, again, like, you really have to know yourself, because even if you have an open identity center, it doesn't mean you have no identity. It doesn't mean you don't have a sense of self. It's just more dynamic and more flexible, I guess. More fluid. I can't even talk anymore. Em and I have been talking about this recently, even with, like, how we define our sexuality. Like, I was like, I don't know if I define myself as gay, or, like, I genuinely, like, every time I've tried to label myself, even with, like, diets, like, oh, I am a vegetarian, it never sticks. It's just, like, I experience so many different versions of myself, and also I know who I am at my core, if that makes sense. But the details of it, like, are a little bit more fluid. I have a strong sense of self at my core, but then, like, the fun, intricate details are a little bit more dynamic and fluid, and I can just feel into people more, is what I would say. And also, location impacts me profoundly. So that's been another interesting piece of that center, I would say. But yeah. Anything else you want to speak to, or are we going to wrap up this podcast?
I think we covered a pretty good amount.
We did. We covered a lot. If you're still here, thank you. Thank you for listening. I know that this was kind of hyper-specific to our charts. The hope was that you would get to know us a little bit more in a fun way, interactive way that also, 70% of people are generators, so I'm sure that this applies to your chart or your friends or loved ones' charts as well. So hopefully you learned something in this podcast. And yeah, with that, I think we're gonna go, and thanks for listening.